Cheers guys, I'm the Tech Prepper. Hope you're all doing well. This is a special video and special day for me. It's been 3 years since I've been on the air. I made my first contact on May 6th, 2020. And in fact, I have the QSL card in yellow right behind me. So I want to share with you guys, I have a lot of new people coming into the channel that are not currently licensed or people that are just getting into it. So I want to share with you why I got into amateur radio. We'll look at some highlights along the way. And specifically, I want to talk about how my gear and my process has evolved. I started out with a $25 or $35 Baofeng UV5R, quite literally 3 years ago. And for those of you who have been with the channel for a while, thank you. And I want to talk about how we transitioned to something like my custom TTP, Manpacks, and all of the field operations that I've been doing for things like targeted contacts. So if you're overwhelmed with amateur radio, not sure how to get in, I want to share with you my path. Every path is different. This hobby is so freaking large and has so many areas to explore. You kind of need to pick and choose your own, but I want to walk you through the beginning and then show you some key points in my journey. All right, folks, like I said, everybody's reason for getting into amateur radio is their own. I personally wanted to get into it to round out my preps. I had focused on personal security, water purification, food storage, medical, and a host of other things like building community. One of my biggest gaps was around communication, so I thought, you know what, there's this thing called amateur radio, really don't know too much about it, I'll look into it. And I thought it was only going to take me probably about 3 months tops, and then I would go on to move on to other things. So the first thing I did was realize that I need to get my technician class license here in the US. Did a little bit of research, and I found out that the technician class book by Gordon West was a good way to give you everything you need to get started, and I actually still recommend this book, if nothing else. The other thing I decided to do was get myself a Baofeng UV5R, and the combo together, less than $100. The one thing that I would change is I probably wish I had known about hamstudy.org, and I would have used that in addition to these two pieces of resources. So I'm not the brightest guy in the world. I actually spent a month studying for my exam. In fact, I talked a little bit about that in one of the videos, and got my license and decided to start out by manually programming the UV5R and also learning to program it for local repeaters. So the very first thing that I actually recommend people do once they get a HT like this or a handy talkie is to find the local repeaters in your area. I actually found that Repeater Book, it's a great little application for iOS and Android, is a great way to find all of the repeaters in your area. And go ahead, try to get on the air, and basically, quite simple, announce yourself. This is KT7RUN, my call sign, and I'm looking to make my first contact. Well, I'll tell you what, I tried that on and off for the first 2 years after I got licensed, and nobody responded to me. I was in a different area, don't know what happened, and I quite literally put amateur radio completely away and thought I was completely done with it. 3 years ago, we moved out to this property. It was right at the beginning of COVID, and what ended up happening was they didn't have their COVID procedures in place yet, and we did not get all of our belongings for about 3 days. I did have the Baofeng, for whatever reason, in my vehicle as part of the core preps I bought. Decided to pull out the Repeater Book application, found a 440 megahertz repeater down about 4.5 miles, keyed up, threw up my call sign, basically gave that same spiel, and my mentor and Elmer Bob, WB4ZKA, responded to my call. In fact, I've got the video, I'll put it up on the screen, talking about that very first contact. And that was the first video I posted on communications on the Tech Prepper channel. So anyways, give yourself some time. It can take a little bit of time. In my case, it took 2 years, and I nearly gave up on the hobby. But after I made that first contact, I was hooked. So let's talk about some other things I explored after that first contact. All right, guys, to make things fun, I'm gonna go ahead and splice in a bunch of key moments from my video feed. I have started with the earliest videos going back 3 years. So the first one is my first ham radio contact. I think at this time, I actually had 3 radios. I had the Baofeng UV5R, the Yaesu FT60. I did my research and found that that was a good, tried and true radio. In fact, I carried that pretty much up until about 6 months ago. And I did a video series on why I switched off of it. And then I also had the FT818ND HF rig as well, actually all band, all mode rig. So let's take a look. So before I lost cell phone coverage, I actually pulled up Repeater Book on my iPhone, and I found some that were just shy of 10 miles from me, which is about what I'm able to do with line of sight on these radios. It can go a bit farther. And fortunate enough, by the time I pulled up to the house, it showed me being 4.1 miles north of the repeater. So I hopped on my computer and I programmed my Baofeng, actually. This is the Baofeng F8 HP. This is the 8-watt radio. I also have the UV5R, and these are really inexpensive radios. But basically I had first programmed the 8-watt radio. I figured I need a little bit more power than 5 watts. And all right, guys, so next up, I got into amateur radio with the intention of not really being that guy that operated from home, or what amateur radio operators call the radio room, the shack. And I wanted to be a portable operator, but I did try to put up some shack. So I actually created a video called aptly My First Shack. Let's take a look. And this ham shack is very much a work in progress. Since I am a technician class licensee holder, I am just barely getting into HF, and since I'm a avid backpacker, I decided to go with a small QRP rig. This is the Yaesu 818ND. I don't recommend it for first HF radio, but for how I want to use it, I love the weight, size, and in fact, it's making me work a bit harder to get everything right. So the next handful of videos were around something called Field Day. I wanted to be an amateur radio field operator, so there was this event once a year called the ARRL Summer Field Day. There's also one in the winter, and I did this video called Field Day 2020 Full Gear Dump. Actually, I did a few prep videos for that and talked a little bit about that experience. In fact, I have to give a shout out to Jason KM for ACK. He saw that video, saw that I was recording on my iPhone 8, said, "Hey man, your audio is good, but your lighting stinks. I want to go ahead and circulate your video." So thank you, Jason, so much for reaching out and helping a new guy out. So it was really easy to set up. So I had my Yaesu 818ND with the Signal Link modem, and then my iPad mini, and then all the cables, and a small 4.5 amp hour Biowino battery. So setup was really quick, no real issues there. What I did like and didn't think would work all that well was I had configured my Raspberry Pi to have a second USB Wi-Fi dongle that was in a mode called Host AP mode, and I was able to pair my iPad mini and connect to that local Wi-Fi and then VNC in, so that all worked beautifully. So after I got everything all set up, I put the software WS-JTX into monitoring mode, and the bands were open like I've never seen them before. There was so much traffic, and it was at that point I realized that given that I run QRP, I was not going to be probably terribly successful because I thought my signal would be stomped on, and that turned out to be the case. So anyways, lots of fun videos. I tried desert foraging, whatever. Some upgrades for the RV, like the lithium iron phosphate upgrades. Looks like I tried to do a small build. I'm actually still using this, my first solar DIY system. It's actually still behind me. Really don't use the inverter too much, but let's take a quick look at that minimal power system for the shack. Oh, here's a fun one. So I think this is another first and another milestone to look at, and it was my first mobile install. In fact, the mobile install that I covered in this video is the same install that I've been running. So for anybody looking for a bulletproof, simple radio that has a lot of capabilities, it's now discontinued. Take a look at the Kenwood D710. Actually, let's take a quick look at that radio real quick. Alright guys, so we have our terminals connected to our battery. We've got the 40 amp fuses, and then temporarily I have it connected to my meter, and it's at 12.65 volts, so we're looking good there. Ran into my first problem, and I was expecting this. The power cable that comes with the D710 is only about 6 feet in length, and I don't think that's going to be enough to run it across the engine compartment, through the firewall, through the paneling, and then back under the passenger side seat. So I went ahead and purchased some 10 gauge zip cord from PowerWorks. I'll just put another pair of power poles on it and connect it to that side, and I'll insulate it with some electrical tape to make sure that no moisture gets into those connectors. I went ahead and took off the mag mount that you saw earlier here, and I just went ahead and cut the cable, and here's the coax that was originally there. It's still fished through into the cab, so I'm going to use this and use it to pull through 2 cables. I have the 10 gauge electrical wiring, and then I have the coax cable that is attached to the lip mount, the Diamond K400 SNMO. All right, moving on. So there's a bunch of stuff here. I talk about how to send email, more APRS. In fact, there's a lot of APRS stuff. Finally, 2 years ago, it looks like I did a video on how I passed my general ham radio test. This took me a while, and the reason why it took me a while is that I wanted to know it cold. So I'll just put the video link up here so you guys can see that. But that's really what changed everything for me, was upgrading to general. Oh, very cool one. So I also captured my first 20 meter SSB single sideband contact. So let's give that a listen.
Tango 1, Romeo, Uniform, November, Gaston, you still with us, W7MMC?
Roger, Roger, Kilo Tango 1, Romeo, Uniform, November.
All right, Gaston, you got to hear the drill, buddy. That's how we do it. If you don't mind, I don't know if you had an opportunity to look at the website or not, but if you don't mind, take that call sign. Say your call sign, say up for grabs. Say up for grabs or work any station as you've heard, and let's go ahead and exchange signal reports to get you some numbers. Roger?
Roger, Kilo Tango 1, Romeo, Uniform, November, up for grabs.
Kilo 7, Papa Alpha Charlie.
Papa Alpha Charlie, go ahead.
This is Kilo 7, Papa Alpha Charlie, sir, and I have you at 5 and 7, 57 into Oregon. Over.
Roger, you're coming in clear to Arizona.
Roger, sir. Could I get a signal report?
You're coming 5 by 9.
5 by 9, thank you very much. And if you would jot down my OMIS membership number, you'll need 2 for membership.
All right, guys, so I'm looking at this feed here, and I really forgot how much I did. The next one was my first Summits on the Air activation. It's a great way to get into the outdoors and bridge your, I guess, journey with amateur radio. You basically take your radio, set up a station at the top of certain peaks, and you make contacts with people. It's a great way to develop your skills. In fact, if you guys want my #1 recommendation, after you get on the repeater, do a little bit of simplex, I highly recommend that even with handheld, you go to a peak that's within your physical limits and be able to, or capabilities rather, and try doing a Summits on the Air activation. It's great practice for off-grid communication. November.
There we go. Kilo Tango 1, Romeo, Uniform, November. Kilo Tango 1, Romeo, Uniform, November. QSL?
QSL, Roger, Roger.
Roger, you are about a 55 here in Florida. K1915. Kilo 1915, QSL.
Fast forward now, we're in 2021, winter field day dry run. That was a fun video. We're gonna skip to that one. I went ahead and deployed the solar panels using the Jeep instead of my normal A-frame. And I have a 19-foot mast deployed with a Slim Jim J-pole, and just want to make sure I'm all ready for the contest. So I do appreciate you getting back to me.
No worries. Like I said, picking me up really loud. I'm just north of Phoenix on Interstate 17. So anyway, good luck, and hope you have fun.
Found this guy lying around.
This box, and Mike, it's funny when you were talking about the big display for the G90, the PX3 for the KX3.
Another breakthrough for me was actually when I discovered NVIS or NVIS. That's an antenna deployment whereby you bring down the antenna at about 1/10 of the wavelength. So let's say on 40 meters, 1/10 is 4 meters, or about what, 13 feet-ish maybe. And you're able to redirect the RF energy straight up at near vertical incident angles, have it come straight back down, and you're able to get communications within about a 300-mile range. In fact, that's what I'm running pretty much every day with my group in the Southwest. So that is a fun video to look at. I actually get dosed with a little bit of rain, or not rain, but a water hose to prove the point or demonstrate NVIS. Morning guys, it's the Tech Prepper. Let's imagine that I'm in Arizona, this box right here, and I have one of my typical antennas with a radiation pattern that looks something like this. Now, what happened is I basically have skipped about 2 or 3 states in terms of my ability to communicate. Now, what if I want to be able to communicate within my home state and just a little bit outside of it? Something like this. All right, now I'm getting wet, but at least we're communicating with my home state in a regional area. All right, continuing on, there's a bunch of stuff. There's my journey into digital, but then the other cool milestone here is when I started to build my Manpack radios. So the first one here is commercial HF Manpack Armorlock TPA 817 Bravo Part 1. And at that time, the Manpack builds were very raw. I was actually experimenting with a camera bag for the housing and using the frames from Armorlock. Hey, good morning guys. I'm the Tech Prepper. Hope everybody's doing well. Today we're out here on a local peak. It's Daisy Mountain in the New River, Arizona area. And we're gonna check out some new gear. I've got the new product from Armorlock. It is the TPA 817B with Recon Kit. And you're gonna be kind of impressed with the ability to get the station up and running. At least I was kind of impressed. Or I think I'm gonna be impressed. All right guys, we're gonna try to do this in one take. The only thing that I've prepared so far is my pad to sit on, and I put on my puffer jacket because it is in the low 40s. So let's take a quick look at what we have here. This is the pouch that I've decided to use for the TPA 817. It's really key that you pick a pouch to work with this, because the TPA 817 was really intended to be used in a vertical position. So the way that I wanted to run this was to be a modular system. So let's go ahead and first disconnect the carabiner clip. And then I put a couple of Molly quick disconnects. I don't know if I like this. I think I might want to go to a Velcro system. But basically, I just need to pull the straps. Hey, how you doing?
Hey, sorry.
No, no worries. I'm just activating the peak for a ham radio thing.
Now, keys 1 RUN in 7 AMA, 5 and 9.
Hey, thanks for coming back to me, N7 AMA. You're also 5959 on Daisy Mountain. I'm testing out a new Manpack. It is the TPA 817B with a Recon kit with a small military style whip antenna. So it's a really modular system. I actually deployed it up here in about 90 seconds. And just keeps going. I mean, I documented every journey. So if you guys are ever interested in how I have arrived to where I am today, this is probably a good way, and also a good way to get me back on YouTube's good graces. One other important milestone, we have to take a look at this one. It's called Field Expedient Digital Comms EmComm Tools app. I'm still working on my off-grid, offline emergency communication platform called EmComm Tools. This was one of the first iterations, and it was actually built on the Raspberry Pi 3B Plus, and the interface is very different. Let's take a look at that one. Morning guys, I'm the Tech Prepper. Hope you're all doing well. Back out here in the Tonto National Forest, and we're going to do some field experiments today, and we're going to look at something that I like to term Field Expedient Digital Communications. I've written some software called EmComm Tools, and we're going to try our hand at its first maiden voyage out here to test out some APRS. Not WinLink today, but it does support it, and we're also going to try to look at some of the capabilities on an all-band, all-mode radio like the Yaesu FT817. Alright guys, I just got to camp, set it all up. Let's take a quick look at my station setup. I have my tarp shelter set up with my trekking poles. Chill the Nerd on Instagram, one of my followers recommended that I actually run my solar panels when I get here. So we're running the PowerFilm 20-watt panels. For antennas today, we're going to be using the Pactena Trek mount, since we're going to be working with both FM and single sideband. We're going to run it in both configurations. Right now it is in the vertical configuration with the Comet BNC 24 antenna, and then I have another one as a ground plane. When we switch over to the single sideband net, we're going to take off the vertical and have our horizontal dipole. Like before, incredibly difficult to guy out the system here. There's a lot of rocks, and again, not a whole lot of room. We're going to be running my smaller QRP radio. This is the Yaesu FT818 with the TPA pack frame from Armorlock. And I've reconfigured this. I was previously running this in the Hazard 4 objective camera bag. And I found this $30 Helicon E&E pouch and fully modified it because I wanted to run it similar to what I have in my larger rig, my 857. I'm running the PRC 117 golf pouch. So if you're interested, check out my Instagram because I did a full custom job on that, and it's a really nice package. So we're gonna do digital, SSB, FM, all that here. Now there is one small bug here. I'm gonna go ahead and turn on APRS. It's really just an issue with the state here. So I gotta turn it on, turn it off, turn it back on again. So off, and now we'll turn it back on. And when we do that, we get now a context-aware mode piece that gets rendered APRS. And for field expedient communications, what I've done is I created like templates. So if I click here, you can actually see I've got a template for sending APRS spots for SOTA, for email to, for my call sign at home, my call sign in the Jeep, SMS gates, who is, and a few other things. So for example, let's say that I want to send an SMS gate message and hit done here. By default, it populates the 2, which is the SMS gate SSID, with a message already pre-canned for my wife. So I should just be able to do send here. And if it works, we should see a message on the console that it is trying to send this packet out to a station, and hopefully that'll relay it on our behalf. So we just sent out a packet. I won't be able to get a confirmation, but that's really it. Well, folks, this video is getting very long. I'm going to scroll through this pretty quickly. Lots of outdoor adventures with gear testing. I mean, I can't tell you how much gear testing I have done. So just go through this feed. Here's another good one that's actually kind of interesting. It's my first experience as alternate net control. So when you find your local repeater, there are these things called nets, and it's whereby a group of operators get together, and some of them are formal, some of them are informal. This particular one is run by the Arizona Emergency Net Maricopa County, and they gave me the opportunity to assist the primary net controller to take check-ins and do a bunch of other things. This really moved the needle for me. Let's take a look.
Let's move on. Alternate net control. Would you please take check-ins from the next 2 groups?
Next, I want stations that could run on field power, but aren't using it right now. So if you could run on power that you would have after your primary batteries are expended, this is your check-in group. Any stations that could run on secondary power, Come now with your FCC call sign only, phonetically and at writing speed. 3 stations at a time, please.
Whiskey, Bravo, 4, Zulu, Kilo, Alpha. Charlie, 7, Echo, Whiskey. Alpha, Delta 7, Alpha, Sierra.
I acknowledge Whiskey, Bravo, 4 ZKA, Kilo 7 Echo Whiskey, and Alpha Delta 7 Alpha Sierra. Next 3 stations, come with your calls now.
Well, clearly, guys, I was rattled, but I had a good experience. In fact, I also did another video where I ran it as primary net control as well. Some other things, some other firsts that were kind of fun. My first public radio service. This is another great way to test yourself. We have quite a few events with MCECG, Maricopa County Emergency Communications Group, whereby we support endurance races. It's a lot of fun. So this experience gave me an insight into actually passing real traffic. My Summits on the Air experience was also very valuable because I actually had to hike out to a remote location, set up my gear, and I was responsible for passing emergency traffic at an aid station. So really great stuff if you really want to see how all of your skills and training is coming together. So more Manpack builds, more gear testing, more activations, more battery testing. The gear has completely changed. Started to do more off-road stuff with the Jeep. Anyway, so everything kind of continues from here on out. We dipped our hands into digital. When you see this series, Digital Comms, Field Exercise Part 1, 2, and 3, we were basically testing digital message passing using our computers and FM. A lot of fun for doing something that's completely different from voice. So I encourage you guys to take a look at that. Also, this seems to be the point in time where I started to transition away from my Yaesu FT60 and over to the VX6. Now, I like to evolve my equipment over time, and the big reason for that change, while I love the FT60, was that I trail run a lot. I actually mark how old my gear is based on trail miles, and I typically run about a little over 2,000 miles per year, depending on the year. And I always bring with me the radios, and I actually destroyed a FT60 with salt, sweat, moisture, and probably a little bit of dust. So that was the big reason for moving over to an IP67 rated device like the VX6. So a lot of my gear choices are based on my operating style. So everybody's like, oh, I need to get a Panasonic FZM1 behind me because that's what the Tech Prepper runs. Well, I run it because I operate in conditions over 100 degrees Fahrenheit. I operate with salt, sweat, moisture, and dust. So I personally need that. So keep that in mind when you guys are looking at what gear is appropriate for you. So everything just goes on and on. I did a giant Manpack series. I think this is what put me on the map, and I walked through all 4 parts, 5 parts, whatever it was, on how I built these guys. And this is absolutely my preferred style of operation. Let's go ahead and fast forward. There's just way too much stuff here, but there is one area I do want to talk about. I think mixed in here, I also did a series called No Random Contacts, and that's where I set out to establish targeted communication with people across the country. And I think this is really the point of amateur radio is, hey, who do you want to talk to and why? What equipment, what band, which modes make sense? This is one I did with Jason KM4 ACK. We planned a contact from here to Tennessee, and we nailed it. I shared the comms plan and everything. In fact, there was one earlier that I also recommend you guys watch that I think was a whole lot more fun. I'll put it up on the screen, but this is when I did a targeted 40-meter contact for that NVIS range, that 0 to 300 mile range, or 30 to 300 mile range. And I did that with my buddy Mike, Kilo Charlie 8, Oscar Whiskey Lima, and we nailed it. So guys, I encourage you guys to choose your own journey. I'm not done yet. We're gonna get into DMR, encryption. We're gonna talk more about my EmComm Tools platform. So bottom line, I could have given up after the first 2 years of not making a contact and just trying here and there. And I'm very thankful and very grateful for the people that came into my life. So I have to give, again, a big shout out to my Elmer Mike, WB4ZKA, for making my first contact, all the people that were involved in all my firsts, and then also to Jason Kame for ACK for encouraging me to continue this YouTube channel. Ooh, looks like we're low battery. All right, guys, I'm the Tech Prepper. Be strong, be safe, and be prepared.